Thank you for coming to the hackathon and building something great. I think it's truly amazing what's going on in our industry and how it's going to impact the larger world. I think those are some of the ideas I'd like to initially chat about, and then we can think about what we can all build together and how that can make a positive impact on society and the world in general. I think probably the initial idea to consider is what is the idea behind our industry, right? Each large shift in how the world works has an idea behind it, that once people understand what the difference is between the world they're in now versus the world that they could be in, they suddenly realize that they want to be in that better world. And so the real question, I think, for us is, what is the fundamental difference between the world we're all creating here together and the world that we have today? And what is the idea of that new and better world encapsulated in a simple proposition that we can give to other people so they can understand what we're doing? Because I think it is true that once an idea takes hold of people, and if that idea has merit, it's impossible for the world not to adopt it and for people not to pursue it. And then the only question is, how fast does that idea propagate? How well does it get realized into reality? How quickly, by how many smart people? And I think at the end of the day, that's what we're all really doing here, is we're trying to propagate an important idea and a change in the world through making practical outcomes, making practical products that change the way that people's lives and relationships work between themselves and each other, between themselves and institutions. I think what this idea comes down to is the idea of trust. What is the trust relationship between people and between people and institutions? What is the relationship that people have between the money they hold and the source of that money's value? What is their relationship between a bank who holds that money? What is their relationship between them and an insurance company that's supposed to reduce risk for them? What's their relationship between them and a game that promises them certain outcomes if they play enough or if they put enough money into the game? What is their relationship to all of these entities and systems that basically promise them certain outcomes? And what is the nature of that promise? And what is the nature of those guarantees? Now, once people understand, in my experience, and actually for me personally, once people understand that the guarantees they have are actually much weaker than they think they are, and that those guarantees don't have to be that way because blockchains and cryptocurrencies and smart contracts and all kinds of other cryptographically based systems give them alternatives, people immediately see the value in that. And that's because the value is so clear and obvious once you understand what it is. And it's really our job to do two things. It's our job to explain what that value is to the rest of the world. And it's our job to build the systems that provide that value to more and more people so that the world can become a more fair, trustworthy, transparent, kind of reliable place for everybody. And this idea of trust is an idea that will, in my opinion, continue to be questioned and continue to lead people to ask, what is my alternative? And the alternative is what our industry makes. Our alternative makes our industry makes the alternative of decentralized infrastructure, blockchain-based agreements, cryptographically guaranteed, math-based contracts. Now, one example of this is what you see in DeFi when something like Robinhood happens, right? So when Robinhood starts and everybody's on Robinhood making money, trading things, everybody's very happy, right? Because they think their relationship with the larger global financial system is very clean cut, right? They have an account, they have some money in the account, there's an asset, they have access to purchase the asset, and everything kind of continues from there. As we've all found out, some of us knew this before, and some of us found this out during the process of the recent, failures in the system. this doesn't actually work the way people think it works. So people are amazed and surprised all the way up to the highest levels of government, all the way down to the most basic users, even to certain people in the financial industry that don't know exactly how these systems work. There's a large degree of surprise to the actual trust relationship that people have with their assets, with the global financial system. And once that idea becomes clear, once people understand that their relationship with their own assets, their relationship with risk, their relationship with their economic life, their relationship with a game is not what they thought it was, they immediately seek alternatives, and they find those alternatives in the blockchain world. So our job as people who are building the future is to build a future that's transparent, trustworthy, fair, and creates more economic opportunity for everybody on a global basis. Not because we append an additional feature to an existing system that will consistently seek to benefit, asymmetrically benefit larger players over smaller players, or certain countries over other countries, but to make an entirely new system that provides an entirely new level of guarantees, just like the internet provided an entirely new way to transfer information. And this is really the body of work and the endeavor that I feel that we're all involved in, including here at this hackathon. And I want us to think about how can we make the world a more trustworthy, more reliable, fairer place through this technology. And I have a few ideas on that point and how we fit into that plan, and how the developers and the amazing people at this hackathon building things would fit into that plan. I think the first thing to think about is that the amount of demand for trustworthy financial products, trustworthy games, trustworthy insurance is extremely high. And that we are at the very early stages of people realizing this idea that they actually do need a trustworthy financial product. They do need a trustworthy form of insurance. And they do need a trustworthy way to play different types of games, or own different types of art, or do different types of things that they thought were reliable but are not reliable. And this is evidenced by the rapid growth of DeFi and the emergence of an ecosystem of different applications that interoperate to create more and more value and usefulness for people in DeFi. Where we go from here, in my opinion, is that the percentage currently in DeFi and currently in these applications is very small. And so DeFi will logically just continue to boom because more and more value will make its way into these DeFi protocols. And our job as the people who provide decentralized infrastructure and decentralized services is to help make the infrastructure to allow that transition to be possible. And your job as developers and the people actually creating the future on top of this enabling technology, such as Chainlink or the various chains at this hackathon, is to build that future. Once we build the future that allows the crypto world's value to flow into DeFi, I strongly do believe that the vast majority of the world's value overall will be on a blockchain and will flow into the DeFi format over time. And eventually people will be putting value into DeFi because they want to use DeFi, not because they want exposure to cryptocurrencies. And that'll also be a large and kind of monumental shift, which will accelerate everything. Now, once again, I think it's very important to understand what role both of us play in this future. We are the people that, together with the various blockchains out there, are able to provide infrastructure. We're able to provide the building blocks, the tools, whether those tools provide external data, access to enterprise backends, access to payment systems. We provide the enabling technology, the capability that wasn't around even 2 years ago and wasn't in the state that it is in now a year ago, and is continuing to improve and provide you new services and new capabilities. And in providing all of this, we enable you, the developers, to take this idea of trustworthy agreements and trustworthy contracts and inject it into the public consciousness through actual use cases, whether that's through DeFi, whether that's through NFTs, whether that's through decentralized insurance, or whether that's through the next name for a smart contract that becomes in demand because people want to interact with a trustworthy system on a blockchain using an oracle. What the next smart contract beyond DeFi, beyond NFTs, beyond decentralized insurance isn't 100% clear. But what is clear is that the infrastructure you have available to you to build those things is expanding and improving by leaps and bounds. And that's really what we hope to offer our ecosystem and the world in general, is our goal around providing the infrastructure that you as engineers and developers can use to build truly world-changing smart contracts and change the way that people see society in many different forms, whether it's the financial format, the gaming format, the insurance format, the property ownership format, whatever format that is. We've already done this to a certain degree with price data, and we're the most widely used price and market data source for decentralized financial products today. I'm sure many of you already know this. We do this through a number of decentralization-focused techniques, cryptographic techniques, and we essentially provide some of the most reliable data to ever make its way into a financial product and the largest amount of data to ever make its way on chain. We're continuing to launch more and more of this data, and this data can be used by you to make the next generation of DeFi products, to improve the existing generation of DeFi products, or to combine existing DeFi products in exciting ways that with additional data can provide even more value to users and can inject decentralized finance even more into the real world. Beyond that, we offer other capabilities such as proof of reserves, where you can do things like solve the crisis of confidence that people have about assets. And it's really this crisis of confidence where people don't know what an asset is worth. They don't know whether an asset still has value. That causes a lot of the cyclical booms and busts in the global financial system, and even regional booms and busts. But if you can go from a system where you audit people every year to where you audit them once a minute because you can prove something about their assets using an Oracle network and a blockchain, you arrive at a world where people have a lot more faith and a lot more truth and a lot more transparency about what's actually going on out in the real world. And this is something that proof of reserve allows, and something that you can build using adapters and any number of other features that we have available for people to build that. In addition to that, you can even go beyond the global financial system and global asset management to build things like insurance. Insurance is one of these examples that I'm personally very excited about, where you can literally have parts of the world that have people completely dependent on whether they have insurance, but the people there don't have insurance because their local legal system doesn't allow it. So you literally have parts of the world where if somebody doesn't have enough rain hit their farm over the next 2 seasons, they have to close down their farm and they have to become a migrant worker. And that's a very weird situation. That's a strange situation because we know whether rain fell where their farm is, and they have, in many cases now, they have a phone, they have a feature phone, or they have an Android phone where they could interact with the internet. And so the world doesn't have to wait for local legal systems to provide contracts to people. The world doesn't have to wait for people to have savings accounts because a bank decides to open up a branch in their country, or because a bank says, I'm going to take the legal risk on the local legal system and make an insurance product for that geographic region. We, as people who can build the future together, can now make the systems that can be offered globally to everybody with an internet connection. And whereas before we were able to do this about information and sharing images and educating people through Wikipedia, we can now do it for contractual agreements, for economically critical arrangements between people and between entities. And this is a massive, massive shift. So we have categories in the Hackathon for social good. We have categories around, how do we generate products that benefit society. Personally, I think one of those categories is definitely insurance and the ability for people to manage risk with the help of smart contracts that trigger events around that risk and oracles that prove whether that risk has occurred, and for them to have access to that globally, regardless of where they are or who they are. Beyond that, there's literally thousands of other use cases that you can build with Chainlink. You can make your own adapter. You can connect to any data source out there in the world. And it's really your imagination that's the limit. And the degree to which people can build next generation, truly unique use cases that inject the trustworthy properties of smart contracts into new industries, into new categories of activity, is partly the degree to which this industry will become about something much more than tokens. I mean, tokens are great and they've seeded the industry with a lot of value, but at this point, it's really up to all of us to make smart contracts and the unique trust they provide about much more than tokens. We need to take this technology into the realm of the global financial system, into the realm of the asset management system, into the realm of insurance, into the realm of gaming, into the realm of every place where society doesn't work properly because people can't trust each other. There isn't transparency. Local legal systems don't work. Whatever the reasons are, those are problems we can now solve with technology. And that's the amazing thing about the modern world, is that technology can suddenly solve problems for millions of people if only it was combined correctly by a certain smaller group of people. And that's the unique kind of position that we occupy. I truly believe that the people who build trust and trustworthy systems into the world will build the future of how the world operates. One additional example about this that only serves to underscore this point is around even something as simple as gaming. Even basic games offered by some of the largest brands in the world are still manipulated and made fraudulent to the detriment of thousands of players. And this is simply because the foundation on which these games and these systems are built are so arcane and antiquated at this point. In this case, it was literally the matter of making up a few certificates or making up a few pieces of paper and kind of, detecting where they would appear before others would. But this is another example where how even the biggest brand, one of the biggest brands in the world, is unfortunately, through probably no desire of their own, involved in creating fraud and creating a lack of faith in games in general. And there's no reason that the world needs to work this way, because we now have technology that takes the capabilities of blockchains, expands it with the help of oracles like Chainlink to include something like randomness. And now systems like Avagachi and other NFTs that we work with can generate outcomes in games that are provably fair. Now, games might not seem terribly important, but they are important to the people that participate in those games. Just like financial products are important to the people that participate in those, and insurance is important to the people that it has a determining factor about their life for. And so there are all of these different categories where the capabilities of blockchains being extended by oracles with the decentralized services that we provide at Chainlink and the decentralized services that you now have access to opens up an entirely new world of what you can build. That world didn't exist 2 years ago. It didn't even exist a year ago the way it exists now. And as we release more and more various services, as we release more and more data, as we release more and more capabilities like randomness to prove that the outcome of a game was actually random and not something someone could manipulate, the more all of these services come to life and are offered to you, the more you can combine them in unique, amazing ways to bring trust and bring smart contracts to new corners of the world where they weren't previously useful. I think DeFi is an example of this. I think NFTs are another example of this. I think decentralized insurance is an upcoming example of this. I think there are a lot of other examples. And it's really our ability to collectively both provide the infrastructure that developers and engineers need to provide smart contracts and trust into categories of and industries that are lacking. And that once again, when something is lacking trust and people feel that and people realize that, whether it's from Robinhood or Wirecard or the McMillions fraud or whatever it is, people naturally begin to look for alternatives. The big difference between now and any other point in history is that there is an alternative. Before, if you were defrauded by a lottery, you could just play another lottery and it would be the same risk. Or if you had somebody who was giving you a financial product and you were somehow mistreated by them, or your rights as a user were not fulfilled the way you expected, you had no other choice. You just went down the street to another broker who had the exact same guarantees. But for the first time in history, if somebody fails in their ability to provide trust to their users, the users look for an alternative through the internet, through YouTube, through Wikipedia, through Twitter, through all these informational channels. And what they will find increasingly through the combination of blockchain oracles and the applications that use those two technologies is an alternative. And the only thing stopping them from adopting that alternative is that they don't know about it, and or that the alternative for their specific situation hasn't been built yet. But once again, the big difference between now and every other time in history is that it can be built. We can build a lottery that is provably fair and can't be gamed by anybody. We can build a financial product that doesn't asymmetrically benefit large hedge funds to the detriment of small holders, of small asset holders, or the larger market. We can build insurance regardless of whether a large insurance company decides to provide insurance to a geography or doesn't decide to provide it. And this is the amazing thing that I think we're all involved in, and that I'm super excited to see come out of this hackathon and what you can build here. Because if somebody here can build the next generation of a vertical or of a use case, or they can improve DeFi, or they can improve insurance, or they can improve how NFTs are generated using VRF, then that is an important incremental step towards this alternate world that is fair and is transparent and doesn't care where you are, where you're born, or where you live. All you need is access to the internet and the willingness to participate in an agreement, which I think will level the playing field across the world about how people participate in markets, what types of risks they can manage, whether they have savings accounts, whether the lotteries or the games they participate in are actually fair, or whether it's something that's controlled against them. And this idea is something that I feel it's almost our responsibility to provide to people, both as an idea and as a practical, tangible product, which I am very hopeful and excited for you to build with our help, and we are more than happy to help and are excited to enable as many teams as possible to make this idea into reality, so that people actually do get the real value that they should be getting from smart contracts and blockchains and all of this trust that's lacking in their existing system. So I wish you the best of luck in the hackathon, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it. We're all rooting for you, and we're truly thrilled to see what the next generation of smart contracts brings to bear for both the larger ecosystem and various other industries where we can't even imagine yet exactly what they'd be doing. So thank you for participating in the hackathon.